So it could be that you're not smart. You're not using the right method. That typically is the idea that pastors are told today why their churches aren't growing. Well, I don't know if it's spirituality. It's probably more just strategy. We don't have the right one. All right, well that could be. But here's another one. Oops. How about spiritual giftedness? You know, in talking to this young man, I could say, well, it might be your prayer life isn't what it ought to be. You're not spiritual enough. You're not filled with the Holy Spirit. Or you're not smart enough. Or you personally just don't have the gifts to do this. God has not gifted you with the gift of evangelism or the gift of leadership or whatever it takes to grow a big church. Could it not be that? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that it might not be spiritual. Somebody said, well, maybe the pastor just doesn't work hard. Well, that's part of what I would call smarts and strategy, okay? You can have a strategy, and if you don't actually work it, what's it going to, you know? I guess it could be, you know, your strategy is not to work. Believe me, that won't work, all right? So I'm assuming that somebody really wants to build a church, a pastor, lay people, they really want to. And so is it spirituality? Is it smart? Is it a lack of spiritual gift? We don't have the right pastor, that's why our church won't grow, because he's not gifted. He's a good man, he might even pray, but boy, when he goes to preach, you know, no one's going to come to hear it. Or he just doesn't have good people skills, whatever. I am telling you, these all can be factors, but there is another factor that we also have to take into consideration. Does anybody know what I'm speaking of right now? Can you read my mind? What else could it be? Sorry?
Not allowing the Holy Spirit to do what He wants to do.
I'm going to put that under spirituality. You're not giving place to the Spirit. You know, that's a lack of spirituality.
It'd just be like,
Bad strategy, too. Yes?
just like Satan, just like Jeremiah, when he preached and was doing what God told him to do, but people weren't coming. It was not his fault.
Oh, you mean there's something on the other side? People actually have to respond, and there's like I'm not responsible totally if they respond or not? Is that what you're saying? We're going to call this, I'm just going to give it an S, okay? Because I have 3 S's there. I got to have my 4th point with an S. Okay. Societal. Whoops. Perception. Society. You're right. Jeremiah's a good example. Some of the prophets were told that they were going to go with a message, and they were told ahead of time that they weren't even going to be listened to, but they still had to go. Now, I sat with that young man, and I said to him, I've worked with you for 3 years. I know you have this down. And he did. He did as well as anybody here. And then I said, I know you, and I know that you're a deep thinker. You're studying, you're getting a good education, and you'll know what a good strategy looks like. I said, I also have worked with you for 3 years, and I know you're gifted. The guy, when he got in the pulpit, he sounded like a bishop when he was like 20. And I don't mean that it was show, it was just him. I think, Dr. Bird, you know what I'm talking about by now. I don't know if you ever heard him preach or had him lead, you know. For the last 10 years, I refused to pastor a church without the church agreeing that I take interns with me, put them on the platform, use them. Ryan Waters has been that man the last 2-3 years for me. Before him was the guy I'm talking about. Before that was Malcolm Donaldson. Before that was Roger and Rachel McCrary. I refuse to do anything that I can also train somebody alongside of me. That's part of what the church should be doing. And I think they're failing themselves when pastors aren't constantly training other young men to do the work of ministry. Where it's got to be one man in the pulpit every service, every Sunday. Everybody's getting shortchanged. Everybody. Young men can be brought to the platform and taught how to run a service so that all I have to do is preach. And you know what? If you talk before it's time to preach, your voice psychologically, the edge is gone from it. Not only that, you're distracted with announcements, with concerns of what's next after this. You can't even worship God. Okay, this is just my opinion. You wanted it, right? You're paying for it, right? You should, I think pastors should be, this is what Paul did all the time. Timothy, Titus, always training people. We're not going to be here forever. And I know we want to be thought that we're the big cheese and, and the board wants to say, hey, you didn't preach last Sunday. We're going to cut your salary a little bit. No, but I'm training a guy too, so we can broaden out a little bit. It's ridiculous to waste that kind of resource that's put right into our hands to train people. I absolutely will take no church that doesn't give me the freedom to do this. I tell them up front, you got the wrong guy. If I can't surround myself with younger men to do worship ministry, bring them in the platform, have them preach, have them, and when they're done after so many years, you talk about ready to go. They're ready to go. This guy was ready to go. He was spiritually gifted. But I said, remember, there's one other factor here. And I illustrated it from my own life. I went into the ministry in 1981. I was 19 years old, took my first church, was there for 6.5 years, had a lot of great experiences, but didn't, bust any attendance records. I was in my community, I was in local prisons, I was busy, and I loved it. We had some people find the Lord, great. Went to my second church, which was my home church. I was there for 10 years. The church had modest growth during my time. After I left, it went way down. Came to GBS, started my, no, there was a new church that I started, and that was the fastest growing church. In fact, starting from scratch, we soon had 6 or 8 families right from our own community of unchurched people. An established church always has a harder time reaching those people, it seems to me. Almost always. We started with nothing except, maybe 6 families in a new setting without all the rules. And what I mean is, you have to do this way. No, we didn't have a Sunday night service. We had a Wednesday night prayer meeting. I came here Sunday afternoons, clear to Cincinnati. It was 220 miles from here. Fastest growing situation and the best situation I've had. After 5 years, I couldn't go back there. Took a church in Florence, resigned there this summer after 6 years, had modest growth there. Treasury went from 3,000 to 90,000, and a little small church. Good situation. Didn't bust any attendance records in any place. I can't even say that's my goal when I go somewhere. I simply want to experience what God has for that place. And I haven't been voted out at a church yet, or asked to leave a church yet. I like it that way. But where was I going with this? Giving you a little background here to make a point or come to a point. This is the point. In talking to that young man, I said, in the middle of all of this, just kind of modest growth, I kept praying and saying, Lord, could you ever send me to a group of people that really wanted to hear the gospel, where I didn't have to plead for them to come to church or drive by their place Saturday and remind them, we're looking for you Sunday, or this, really, truly hungry people. And he allowed me to start going to the Ukraine in 1991. The first time I preached there was probably, 20 people that responded. Over the course of that summer, there were hundreds of people. Over the course of the next 3 years, maybe thousands. Everywhere you went, prisons, military camps, schools, houses of culture, on the street, in churches, services interrupted with people coming out of the balcony to come forward and just kneel. They didn't have an altar. They don't have an altar. They just kneel right down on the platform. They put a mic under their mouth and they confess their sins and get right with God right there. Service interrupted at times for that. And I recognized that it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with my level of spirituality, although I believe I was right with God in answering His call to do what I was doing. It's not that it wasn't important. And I didn't think it had a lot to do with my smarts. I was simply doing what Russian pastors were asking me to do. And, we were taking the gospel to them now because the communists were letting us. We weren't just asking them to come to church. I went to a military camp of soldiers who had been brought back from East Germany. Preached to 200-300 soldiers on kind of the open common there. gave Bibles to them. Their commander came to me at the end with tears in his eyes, and he said, I want you to know you can come here anytime and preach to my soldiers. Thanks for coming. I can go on and on with these stories. I can tell you many stories where a newspaper reporter broke down in the middle of an interview and said, I have that hunger inside of me right now. She wanted to pray. A Jewish television reporter wanted to put an American pastor on the evening news of a city of about 200,000 people. I was on 2 or 3 times the evening news over the course of a couple years. Unfortunately, CNN and ABC haven't contacted me here. The issue, you see, is receptivity. The issue is that society was ready to receive the gospel. And so never completely rule that out as a factor. My theory is that Americans are pragmatists. That means whatever works, we do, and we are going to make it work no matter what. And you know what this does? This causes us to cheapen our methods and eventually our message, because we're still going to fill up our churches regardless. And so we are very susceptible to compromise. We'll trivialize our methods. One pastor recently and his wife were trying to celebrate marriage and sexuality inside of marriage. So he slept for 30 days with his wife on the roof of his church and had sex every day. Hey, great for you. I'm so glad for you. But you talk about trivializing. This was supposed to attract the city to his church. So I guess everybody was on their roof having sex every night with their spouse or their partner. It's just ridiculous. Do you understand what I'm talking about? If your goal is just to be big, but it's not to really change lives and to disciple people like Dr. Berg's been talking to you about, then don't call it church growth. I don't know what it is. Call it something else. A social club where people kind of want to get together. But it's about worship. You can't find one seeker-sensitive statement in the New Testament. Not one.